Cleveland 911, do you need...
Hello, please. Help me, I'm Amanda Berry.
You need police, fire, or ambulance?
I need police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped, and I've been missing for 10 years, and I'm here. I'm free now.
Okay, and what's your address?
2207 Seymour Avenue.
2207 Seymour. Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
Huh?
Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
I can't hear you.
It looks like you were calling me from 2210 Seymour.
Yeah, I'm across the street. I'm using the phone.
Okay, stay there with those neighbors. Talk to the police when they get there.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, talk to the police when they get there.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, talk to the police when they get there.
Okay, I'm on the way right now.
We're going to send them as soon as we get a car open.
No, I need them now before we get back.
All right, we're sending them, okay?
Okay, I mean,
Who's the guy? Who's the guy you're who's the guy who went out?
His name is Ariel Castro.
All right, how old is he?
He's like 52.
All right, and
Steven, I'm Amanda Berry. I've been on the news for the last 10 years.
Okay, I got that here. I already. And you said, what was his name again?
Ariel Castro.
And is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He's Hispanic.
What's he wearing?
I don't know, because he's not here right now. That's
when
why I got away.
When he left, what was he wearing?
Sweetheart, it's a pity. What?
Right, the police are on the way. Talk to them when they get there. Okay?
Okay.
I told you they're on the way. Talk to them when they get there, okay?
All right, okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Amanda Berry had been missing for almost exactly 10 years when a call came into 911 from a young woman claiming to be her. Many in the area believed that she was dead, and most of the time, if someone disappears and hasn't been found after 10 years, that would absolutely be the case. We've all heard stories of children disappearing only to be rescued years later. J.C. Dugard was held captive for 18 years before being rescued. Carlina White was kidnapped when she was only 19 days old and didn't find out who her real family was until she was 23. So it happens, but statistically, when a child has been missing for more than 24 hours, they've already been killed by their abductor. Officers Anthony Espada and Michael Tracy raced to Seymour Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. On the way, they knew it was possible that the caller was the missing woman, but they remained ready for anything. It's not uncommon for someone to claim they're someone they aren't. From immature pranks to mental illness, the reasons vary, but this wouldn't be the first time someone claimed to be a well-known missing person. So the officers were skeptical, but as they pulled up to the scene, they immediately recognized the missing woman running up to their patrol car. It was, in fact, Amanda Berry. When they asked if anyone else was in the house, she told them that Gina DeJesus and Michelle Knight were also there, and the three of them had spent 10 years as a predator's sex slaves. This is Monsters. Michelle Knight was born on April 23, 1981 to Barbara Knight and a father who's never been named. She had twin brothers who were 2 years younger, and they grew up in Cleveland. Her early life included living in a car with her mother and brothers before finally getting a house through social services. Soon, Michelle said a family friend began sexually abusing her, which went on for years. She struggled through high school, causing her to be held back in class. Other students bullied her over her academic difficulties, and by the time she was 13, she was only in 5th grade. That was less so because she wasn't smart, and more so because she missed a lot of school so she could take care of her siblings and cousins. That was the same year she ran away from home in an effort to get away from the sexual abuse, and after living on the streets for a while, she was offered a job running drugs for a local gang. It was only a few weeks later that the dealer got arrested and Michelle was back on the streets. Soon after, a family friend saw her and called her father, who showed up and forcefully pushed her into his car. She remained at home for the next few years, and her mother demanded she go back to school. Fortunately, she was able to prove she was smarter than others thought and took a placement test to bump her up into 9th grade. It was there that she began seeing another student named Eric, and when she was 17, she got pregnant. She said she quickly learned that Eric had a girlfriend at another school and was just using her for sex, so she broke it off with him. Michelle reported that her father left the family when she was about 5 months pregnant. Michelle gave birth to her son Joey on October 24, 1999, and she continued living with her mother Barbara. Eventually, Barbara allowed her boyfriend to move in, who Michelle calls Carlos in her autobiography. He had a history of drinking and violence. In June of 2002, Michelle arrived home where Barbara was supposed to be watching Joey, but she was gone and Carlos was there instead. The man was drunk and began acting aggressively toward Michelle. Michelle described trying to get Joey away from him, but her son was so scared he ended up wetting himself. When that happened, Carlos grabbed the 2-year-old by the leg so forcefully he broke the boy's knee. Michelle took her son to the hospital, but she was afraid of losing custody of him, so she lied and told the doctors he fell. It turned out that Carlos's sister called the hospital and told them what really happened, and Carlos confessed to what he had done. Carlos ended up pleading guilty to child abuse and felonious assault, but social services still determined that Joey wasn't safe in the home and placed him in foster care. After that, Michelle began doing everything she could to get her son back. She moved out of her mother's house and rented a room from her cousin. She started trying to find any job she could so she could show that she had means to raise her son. Her cousin introduced her to some of the people in her neighborhood, and one was a 14-year-old girl named Ariel Castro. Emily was friends with another one of Michelle's cousins, and they started coming over to hang out with Michelle regularly. Emily lived with her mother, but she saw her father quite a bit, and Michelle would overhear her on the phone making plans. Emily never formally introduced Michelle to her father, but she talked about him enough that Michelle felt like she knew him. Over the summer, Michelle had a few visits with Joey, and then on August 23, 2002, she was scheduled to meet with social services at 2:30 p.m. to go over the process of getting her son back. There was a court hearing scheduled for August 29th. Her ride had canceled on her, so she had to walk there to a part of town she wasn't entirely familiar with. As she got closer, she walked into a dollar store to ask for directions, and that's when a man appeared next to her and said he knew where the office was. Michelle looked at the man and immediately recognized him from the pictures on Emily's phone. It was her friend's father, Ariel Castro. Michelle told him that she was friends with Emily, and they chuckled over the small world moment. Then Ariel offered her a ride. There was a sign on the man's car advertising puppies for sale, so Michelle told him how much her son loved puppies. Ariel said he needed to swing by his house real quick to check on the puppies, assuring her that he was on the way. At the house, Ariel asked Michelle if she wanted to come inside and pick out a puppy for Joey. Michelle happily agreed, and they entered the house through the back door. Michelle said she found it oddly quiet, assuming she would have heard the puppies, but she continued following Ariel up the stairs. At the top of the stairs, they entered a small pink room, and once they were both inside, Ariel slammed the door and locked it. Michelle immediately started shouting to let her go. She didn't want to miss her appointment and hurt her chances of getting her son back. The man grabbed her face and told her he would kill her if she yelled again. Then he threw her to the floor and she passed out. It turned out that their meeting wasn't actually as spontaneous as it had seemed. Ariel had been looking for someone to kidnap and saw Michelle walking toward the dollar store as he was driving by. He recognized her as a friend of his daughter's and pulled into the parking lot to put his plan into motion. Michelle was minutes away from meeting social services about her son, and then Ariel Castro locked her up and made her disappear from his life. Ariel Castro was born on July 10, 1960 in a rural area outside of Yauco, Puerto Rico. He was the third of 4 children born to Pedro Castro and Lillian Rodriguez. The Castros were a prominent family in their little town known as the coffee capital of Puerto Rico. Unknown to Lillian, Pedro had a second family with another woman who lived in a house nearby. They ended up having 4 children together, and when Lillian discovered the truth, she confronted her husband. Pedro responded by cutting ties with his first family and moving into the other house. Ariel was only 2 years old, and his mother had just given birth to his younger brother. Lillian was so hurt by her husband's betrayal that she left her children with their grandmother and moved to Pennsylvania. U.S. citizenship was given to Puerto Ricans in 1917 after Woodrow Wilson signed the Jones-Shafroth Act, so no visa was needed for her to move to the U.S. mainland. Ariel would later tell a psychiatrist that he was sexually abused by a 9-year-old friend of the family for about a year when he was 5, while still in Puerto Rico. In 1966, Lillian had her children moved to Pennsylvania to live with her, and Ariel would claim that she physically abused him from that point on. It was while living there that he received a guitar on Christmas and fell in love with playing music. In 1968, Pedro moved with his second family to Cleveland, Ohio, where some of his family members already lived. He opened a used car dealership that was quickly successful. Pedro's brother Ceci then opened a grocery store, and his other brother Edwin opened a record store. By the end of the 60s, the Castros were a prominent family in Cleveland, just like they had been in Yauco. In 1970, Lillian moved the family to Cleveland so her children could be closer to their father and to benefit from their success in the area. Ariel started junior high school in Cleveland and was reported to be a below-average student. He was disciplined once for having touched a fellow student's breast, but for most of his young life he stayed out of trouble. Once in high school, he began playing bass in a Latin band called Los Steños. People said he was a good bass player and well-liked by people around. He continued playing music at weddings and bar mitzvahs after high school while supplementing his income with minimum-wage jobs. It was in 1980 that 20-year-old Ariel met 17-year-old Grimilda Figueroa, who lived across the street from the house his mother had just moved into. Ariel invited her to see his band play, and soon after, they were dating. They weren't together long before they stayed out after a show and had sex. When Nilda's mother found out, she told Ariel that he had to take her, and that was when the teen girl moved across the street to live with the Castros. The couple never got married, but they would remain together for the next 14 years. When Nilda got pregnant at the very end of 1980, they moved out of Lillian's house and into a 2-bedroom apartment. Ariel Castro Jr. was born in September of 1981, and Ariel Sr.'s behavior toward Nilda quickly turned violent. She would later testify that soon after their first child was born, his attitude changed, with her believing the birth made him think he owned her. Even the smallest arguments turned violent. He would punch her in the face and throw her against the concrete. Once he punched her so hard he broke her nose. He began isolating her, not allowing her to leave the house without his permission. When she was allowed, she had to wear big flowy dresses so other men couldn't see her body. She wasn't allowed to watch certain television shows, so when he would return home, he would check to see if the TV was warm, then look through the TV guide to see if anything he had disapproved of had been on. If it had, she would get beaten. By the time Nilda became pregnant again, Ariel was working for a plastics factory. They moved into an apartment at Nilda's father's house to save money, but that did nothing to ease the violence. Ariel would lock her in the apartment to ensure she wasn't doing anything he didn't approve of. When Nilda's father was later interviewed, he said he knew Ariel beat his daughter, but she said not to get involved. Oh, well, as long as she said not to get involved, why would you want to stop your daughter from being physically abused? Ariel and Nilda's daughter Angie was born in January of 1983, and family members were immediately not allowed to visit the baby. Ariel lost his job at the plastics factory and lived off welfare for a few years before he got a job and moved the family to a different apartment. Putting more distance between them and Nilda's father, Ariel's abuse only escalated. He punched her in the face, breaking her nose a second time. A few weeks later, Nilda was rushed to the ER with a shattered rib after Ariel repeatedly kicked her. After that, he dislocated her shoulder by twisting her arm behind her back. She was in the hospital for 3 days after he hit her in the head with a metal bar, causing a serious concussion and requiring 40 stitches. In 1987, he punched her in the eye, causing permanent nerve damage, and then in January of 1988, when she was 9 months pregnant, he hit her in the head with a barbell and beat her. Emily was born a few days later. The abuse was finally reported to the police on September 30th, 1989. When Ariel was leaving the house, Nilda made the completely unforgivable mistake of simply asking where he was going. He slapped her across the face and then threw her against the wall. Nilda managed to escape and made it to a neighbor's apartment where she called 911. Ariel was arrested and Nilda was checked out at the hospital before giving a statement to the police. Nilda was too scared to press charges and Ariel was released the same day. Nilda remained with Ariel and they had their final child together, a daughter named Arlene, in September of 1990. A few months later, Ariel applied to become a bus driver for the Cleveland School District. He was offered the job in February of 1991. Ariel purchased a house on Seymour Avenue from his uncle for $12,000 in 1992. Owning the property only made it easier for Ariel to control his family. He installed locks on a number of rooms in the house. He nailed the windows shut. He also added a layer of brick to the basement walls, making it soundproof. A project like that is not a good sign from someone abusive who has a history of cutting people off from their loved ones. He was a tyrant to the people who lived with him in the house, but to the outside world, Ariel made them believe he was the friendly neighborhood bus driver. As is usually the case with psychopaths, they ensure people around them see them as good, trusting people. It lowers their guard and makes them easier to take advantage of. To his neighborhood, Ariel Castro was a good church-going family man who drove the local kids to school and back. He couldn't possibly be a horrible monster. Nilda had given birth to her last child with Ariel, but it wasn't her last pregnancy. Shortly after moving into the house on Seymour, Nilda became pregnant, but Ariel didn't want more children, so he punched and kicked her to cause a miscarriage. In 1993, Ariel pushed Nilda down a set of concrete stairs. She hit her head and was left with permanent brain damage. By then, teenage Ariel Jr. was getting just as much abuse. Even as a young boy, he wanted to step up and protect his mother, which only caused Ariel to beat him as well. Nilda's head trauma caused her to suffer from seizures, and once when she was taken to the hospital, scans showed that she had developed a brain tumor. The doctor said it was likely caused by her head injury, and unfortunately it was inoperable. Less than a month later, Ariel attacked Nilda and she managed to call the police. They arrested Ariel, but like before, she chose not to press charges and her husband was released. The Cleveland district attorney saw the case and decided to bring it before a grand jury anyway. The man clearly had a long history of abusing his common-law wife, and the DA hoped he could do something about it. Unfortunately, Nilda testified before the grand jury that there had been no abuse and they declined to charge Ariel. 11 years later, Nilda would admit that just before she was set to testify, Ariel threatened to kill her and the children if she did. At the end of 1994, Nilda was back in the hospital to have brain surgery to try to relieve her seizures. Afterward, she had regular physical therapy at the hospital where she met a security guard named Fernando Colon. Over the years, Nilda told Fernando about the abuse, and in 1995, Nilda and the children left Ariel and moved in with Fernando. Ariel accepted that Nilda didn't want to be with him anymore and moved on with his life. No, of course he didn't. He's an abusive narcissist. He found Fernando's address and phone number and began harassing them regularly. That culminated in Ariel trying to run Fernando down with his car in May of 1996, and Fernando filed a criminal complaint. Ariel wasn't charged, but from that point on, he left Fernando, Nilda, and his children alone. It probably helped that in 2000, Ariel started dating another woman, Lillian Roldan, and despite asking her to marry him early in their relationship, they never did. She also turned down his offer to move in with him, probably because she would later say his house was always filthy. It's unclear how things might have been different if she said yes, but having the whole house to himself, he was able to start preparing to carry out his fantasy, kidnapping a young girl and holding her as a sex slave. It seemed that since Nilda had left, Ariel had become obsessed with sadomasochistic sex and humiliation. Though his girlfriend Lillian would later say her relationship with him was nothing like his relationship with Nilda. She would say he never abused her and their sex life was pretty normal. It feels like Ariel wanted to have a normal relationship and then have a captive to use as a replacement for the woman he would abuse and force sex upon. When he saw Michelle Knight walking down the street on August 23, 2002, he immediately decided to put his plan in motion. When Michelle regained consciousness in the pink room, Ariel brought in 2 orange extension cords and began tying her up. Michelle struggled, but Ariel was too strong. Michelle was tiny. She was only 4'7" or 140 centimeters. Once she was essentially hog-tied, Ariel pulled down his pants and started masturbating. The entire time he talked to Michelle, saying, quote, "I really just want us to be friends. My wife and kids left, and all I want is for someone to be here for me. I need you." Once Ariel was finished, he sat in the room for a while in silence. There were 2 metal poles in the room with a wire pulled between them. Ariel tied Michelle to the wire and hoisted her off the ground. She was hanging in the room facing a window, and Ariel stuck a dirty sock in her mouth and secured it with duct tape. Then he said in a friendly voice, quote, "I'm gonna get us some food." Michelle hung there for what she believed was more than a day. She recalled the sun going down and then it being morning, then afternoon, then another night. Suddenly the door burst open and Ariel pulled the duct tape from her face, removing the sock. He tried to shove a sausage sandwich in her mouth, but she refused to eat it. Ariel released the cable and Michelle fell to the floor. Then he untied her, carried her to the next room over, the white room, where there was a queen-size bed. He spent hours in that room repeatedly raping Michelle. Then he laid on the bed next to her, rambling on about how terrible his childhood had been, how he didn't mean to beat Nilda but couldn't help himself, and that he just wanted someone to be with him. He eventually got up and left Michelle alone. She immediately started to make her way to the door, but Ariel was quickly back and he had her purse. He dumped out its contents and found her ID. After looking at it, he asked, quote, "You're 21?" To which Michelle answered yes. Ariel became enraged. He yelled that he thought she was younger, and due to her small size and tendency to hang out with people younger than herself, it would be a reasonable mistake. It just made this situation worse since Ariel was hoping he had kidnapped a younger girl to hold as a sex slave. When Ariel was finished with Michelle, he led her down the stairs to the main floor. Then he unlocked a door that led down to the basement. There was another metal pole in the middle of the basement, and there were old rusty chains on the floor. Ariel put another dirty sock in Michelle's mouth, then put her against the pole and zip-tied her hands behind her back around the pole. He wrapped a chain around her waist, and then he put a motorcycle helmet over her head. He told her that she would stay there until she could be trusted. At about 6 p.m. the same day, Michelle's mother, Barbara, reported her missing to the police. Generally, the police will not jump into action when an adult is reported missing, but Barbara had told them that Michelle was disabled. She said Michelle was developmentally delayed and got easily confused as to where she was. That caused the police to immediately check hospitals, relatives' houses, and the morgue, but after that they didn't really do much else. Authorities said that she probably took off on her own because she was upset about the loss of her son. Ariel spent the following year living 2 lives. One as the friendly neighborhood bus driver. He would spend time with his girlfriend Lillian, who would occasionally stay the night at his house. Michelle said she could hear them having sex, but she had a gag in her mouth and a helmet over her head, so she wasn't able to make enough noise for Lillian to hear. Lillian said he was extremely attentive and caring toward her during that time. That was likely because he was able to take his rage out on Michelle in his other life. He would go into the basement to beat and rape Michelle up to 7 times a day. About a month after she was taken, Ariel brought Michelle back up to the pink bedroom on the top floor of the house. The poles were gone and there was an old mattress in the corner. He chained her up in that room. The second month of her captivity, Ariel learned that Michelle was pregnant, so he beat her repeatedly until she had a miscarriage. While she was in the pink room, he modified the other rooms upstairs, boarding up the windows and making them more secure. Then she was moved to a third room, the blue room. Little by little, Ariel began giving things to Michelle that made her life more comfortable. though nothing could compare to being chained in a bedroom by a crazy sex fiend. He brought her a radio so she could listen to music. A week later, he entered the room and had with him a small pit bull puppy. He told Michelle he was for her and she named him Lobo. She trained Lobo to only go to the bathroom in the box he had been brought in, and occasionally Ariel would come in and clean out the box. Lobo also had a chance to go outside, as Ariel usually took the dog and chained him up in the backyard when he was inside raping Michelle. One day, Ariel came into the room drunk and started assaulting Michelle, which Lobo was not happy about. He ran and tried to bite the man on his leg, but Ariel quickly grabbed him and snapped his neck. Ariel took Michelle downstairs and forced her to watch as he tossed the lifeless puppy's body over the fence. Michelle went back into the blue room alone, but she still had her radio to help keep her connected to the outside world. Amanda Berry was born on April 22, 1986 to Johnny Berry and Luana Miller. She had one older sister. Her father was abusive and spent time in jail, but her parents split up when she was only 4 years old. He moved away and the girls stayed with their mother in Cleveland. Amanda was a good student and was placed into gifted programs in school. She had a dream of becoming a fashion designer. She loved the latest fashions and jewelry. She disliked the amount of fights and the toxic environment at school, so she was in a school-from-home program for her junior year. She was known as a partier, regularly staying out late, drinking and smoking marijuana, but she was never known to do any harder drugs. When Amanda turned 16, she got a part-time job at Burger King, making some extra cash like many kids her age. There she met another 16-year-old named Deniso Diaz, who went by DJ. The couple started dating, but their relationship would not be long-lived. On April 21, 2003, the day before her 17th birthday, Amanda left her home at just before 4 p.m. to work a shift with the plan of coming home to celebrate her birthday. She was scheduled to work until 8 p.m. but ended up clocking out 24 minutes early. She told a friend that she had plans to stop at home and get some money, then to go get her nails done. That was when she left to walk home. As she was walking, she was talking on the phone to her sister. Ariel and his youngest daughter Arlene drove to where Ariel let her out a few houses down the street. Amanda said she thought she recognized the girl, so when Ariel pulled up to her and asked her if she wanted a ride, she accepted. She told her sister she had a ride and got off the phone. It was the last time anyone would hear from Amanda for a decade. When Amanda got into the van, she was unsure if she knew the man driving. Then Ariel said his son, Ariel Jr., who went by Anthony, also used to work at the Burger King. That's when Amanda relaxed, recognizing where she knew the man from. Amanda told him she had also gone to middle school with his oldest daughter, Angie. When Amanda asked how Angie was doing, Ariel offered to take her to his house to visit. Ariel's plan worked, and Amanda accepted the offer to go visit Angie. Unfortunately, this was also not a random encounter. Ariel had been watching Amanda for a while and was looking for an opportunity to get her to his house. Once they were there, Amanda quickly realized that her friend was not there, and Ariel forced her to an upstairs room and demanded she pull her pants down. After repeated threats, she gave in and did what she was told. That's when Ariel pulled down his own pants and masturbated in front of her. Then he threw her onto a bed and raped her. When he was finished, he told Amanda that he was going to take her home. Then he taped up her wrists and ankles and put the motorcycle helmet over her head. Again, he told her he was going to take her home and that he'd only done that so she couldn't scream on the way. Then he took her down into the basement, put her against the pole, and locked a chain around her. Amanda said she screamed over and over, defying Ariel's command to stay quiet, but nobody came to her rescue. The following day, Ariel unlocked Amanda and took her up the stairs to let her shower. Then he gave her a breakfast sandwich from Burger King. When she finished eating, he took her to a bedroom upstairs where he raped her. After that, he led the frightened girl back down into the basement and locked her to the pole. It was Amanda's 17th birthday, and she would not leave the house until just days after she turned 27. Amanda's mother, Luana, knew something was wrong when Amanda didn't arrive home from work. They had plans for her birthday, so it would be strange for her to not come home. She had also been talking to her sister on the phone while she was walking home. Luana reported Amanda missing the following day at about noon. A detective interviewed Amanda's family and they showed him the girl's room, pointing out that she hadn't taken any clothes, money, or her phone charger. They said she had not been in trouble and had no reason to take off on her own. It was her birthday and she had been excited to celebrate for the previous week. When the detective interviewed Amanda's boyfriend DJ, he said they had plans to meet up the night before at 10 p.m., but she never called him. He said he received a call at midnight and the caller ID said it was Amanda's number, but his phone died when he tried to answer it. He told the detective that he spent the next few hours driving around looking for her. He specifically told the detective that he believed she had been kidnapped. DJ would become the prime suspect in Amanda's disappearance. Ariel did something brazen on April 28th. After seeing Amanda's mother on the news, he used her cell phone, which he had taken from her when they got to his house, and called her. He told Luana that he had her daughter and that she was still alive. When she asked to talk to Amanda, he hung up. Then he called back 2 minutes later and told her that they were going to get married. He said that Amanda wanted to be with him, and then he hung up again. Luana said that was the only time she had ever heard from him. The authorities shrugged it off as a hoax, even suggesting Amanda was in on it. Back at Ariel's house, Amanda was still unaware that there was another girl being held captive. She had seen a glimpse of another person in a bedroom, and Ariel told her it was his roommate, but she didn't seem to do anything about her cries for help. Without knowing they were also being held against her will, the situation was confusing for Amanda. When she asked for something to write in, Ariel gave Amanda a journal with the rule that she not write down any names. She would go on to keep journals throughout her captivity that would help in telling this story after the nightmare was finally over. People wonder why someone in a situation like this might start to cooperate with their captor, and the answer isn't that simple. A human being's brain will instinctively go into survival mode and make a person do things they normally wouldn't in order to stay alive. Then once that brain has been conditioned to believe that one thing always equals another, they will automatically start to adjust. If that other thing is something dangerous or painful, a person will become conditioned to cooperate. And for many people, any sense of freedom becomes more valuable than the alternative. So when Ariel asked if Amanda wanted to help him do laundry, she said yes. Not because she wanted to help him. Not because she wanted to do laundry, but because it gave her some time out of the chains. So she was allowed to leave her room and was led into another room where she met Michelle. Ariel gave Amanda a garbage bag and told her to pick up the garbage in the room. It consisted mainly of fast food wrappers. Nobody told Amanda Michelle's name, but it was clear that she was just as afraid of the kidnapper as Amanda. Then he told Amanda to leave the room and lock the door. Down in the basement, he showed Amanda a large pile of clothes and told her to start doing laundry. After she sorted the pile and started the first load, Ariel made her go back to her room. It would be months before the two captives would see each other again. Over the next year, Amanda and Michelle only saw each other a handful of times. Ariel would put them in the same room but didn't give them enough time to really talk to each other. It was like he was slowly introducing two animals to each other. Michelle would later say that she noticed that Amanda was treated better than she was. She got better food and Ariel didn't beat her like he did to Michelle. By then, Michelle had become pregnant 2 more times and beaten in order to force a miscarriage both times. Ariel would also make Michelle watch the news segments about the search for Amanda and say things like, quote, "See, people are searching for Amanda. Why isn't anybody looking for you?" In October of 2003, Ariel broke up with Lillian and started planning to kidnap a third girl. It was in late March that Ariel made Michelle help him prepare one of the bedrooms for his next victim. They drilled holes in the walls to run chains through, and soon the girls would be joined by the final member of the kidnapped trio. Georgina DeJesus was born on February 13, 1990, to Felix DeJesus and Nancy Ruiz. She had 2 siblings, a brother and a sister. Her sister lived with them and had 2 children of her own, so it tended to be a busy house. Felix was another member of a prominent Puerto Rican family, and he had gone to high school with Ariel. Felix worked at a factory that made saw blades, and Nancy stayed home and took care of the children. Gina had struggled in school and was in a special program because she was still learning how to read. Her teacher had recently told her that she was doing well and that she shouldn't give up on her plans to go to college. Neither of her parents had finished high school, so the idea of going to college was a dream of hers. Georgina, who went by Gina, was friends with Ariel Castro, both being the same age. On April 2, 2004, 14-year-old Gina left school with Ariel with the intention of going to Gina's house together, but when Ariel called her mother from a payphone, Nilda informed her that she was still grounded and did not have permission to go to her friend's house. The girls parted ways, and Gina, having missed the bus, began walking home. Ariel had a habit of picking up his daughters whenever he wanted without permission, and on April 2nd, he showed up at the school wanting to pick up Ariel. When he didn't find her there, he started driving around looking for her, but instead he found Gina walking alone. He rolled down the window and asked if Gina would help him look for Ariel, and, knowing the man as her friend's father, Gina agreed. Then Ariel asked if he could stop by his house so she could help him move a large speaker, and not knowing that her friend's father was actually a sex-crazed pedophile, she agreed again. Once at the house, Ariel said he didn't need a speaker moved and then asked the girl to show him her privates. She got upset, understandably, and asked to leave. He told her that was fine and directed her to a different door that she didn't realize led to the basement. Once down there, he chained her to the pole, put a rag into her mouth, and tied a rope around her head. He pulled down his pants, masturbated in front of her, and then walked up the stairs. A few minutes later, he returned with a radio, which he plugged in and turned up full blast. Nancy expected her daughter home after school, but when it was 30 minutes later than she usually got home, she started calling her friends. When none of her friends had seen her, Nancy called 911, but she got brushed off. The officer said she would probably show up eventually. When Gina was still missing the following day, an officer finally interviewed the family. Then the information was passed to the FBI, who had been investigating the disappearance of Amanda. The two disappearances were too similar to not believe they were connected. Unfortunately, Michelle's disappearance was never linked since she was an adult and never legitimately investigated. Amanda's boyfriend DJ was taken into custody and interviewed, but he had no information about the disappearance of Gina. There was no information to link Ariel to the abduction of Gina, and the case went cold. Ariel had been paranoid that one of the security cameras at the school had captured him. The main security camera, which would have gotten the clearest shot of him, was not working, but also he worked for the school district and his daughter went to school there, so his presence didn't raise any suspicion. Still, he got out a pen and paper and wrote a 4-page confession letter, which he put in an envelope and stuck in a kitchen drawer. He would not need it, and the letter would sit in that drawer for almost 10 years. At first, Ariel denied having taken Gina to the other girls. They both later said they knew he was lying. After a few weeks, Ariel put Michelle and Gina in the bathroom together for a few minutes. Again, short introductions. Michelle used the opportunity to give Gina as much advice as she could, specifically not to tell Ariel she knew who he was. That would always end with severe consequences. Eventually, Ariel put Gina in the pink room with Michelle and chained them together. When Ariel came in from then on, he would rape one or the other right in front of the other girl. Michelle would say that she would take more physical abuse from Ariel, getting a fist when Gina usually got a slap. She also said she tried to get in front of Gina when she was being hit to take the abuse for her. Over the years, the three captives were gradually allowed more freedom. They were eventually allowed to live in their locked rooms without chains. He had conditioned them with psychological torture. He would leave their room door unlocked and say he was going out. Then he would wait for one of them to open the door and beat them mercilessly for the indiscretion. He also told them that they were not the first girls he had kidnapped, with the ones that were good making it back home and the ones who weren't being killed. It's hard to tell this story and say any of the girls were treated better. They were all horrifically abused, tortured, and raped, but in a comparative sense, it seemed as though Amanda was treated better than Michelle and Gina. She had her own room, which was in better condition. She was always allowed clothing, where Michelle was forced to be naked for years until Gina arrived. Amanda was also given more food more often and was physically abused less severely. There are a few theories as to why that was. First, it feels like Ariel was always disappointed that Michelle was older than he thought she was. People also believe that Ariel loved that Amanda's disappearance got more attention in the media, which made him feel like she had become a celebrity. Michelle would later say that she believed that Ariel considered Amanda his wife. Then there were the pregnancies. Michelle had become pregnant 5 times during her captivity and was beaten to force a miscarriage each time. In 2006, Amanda learned that she was pregnant and Ariel allowed her to carry the baby to term. On September 21, 2006, 2 men were arrested for the murder of Gina after authorities received an anonymous tip saying her remains were buried under their garage. Authorities converged on the house with jackhammers and cadaver dogs but didn't find anything. The men were released and the case went back to being cold. At one point, Amanda's mother Luana went on the Montel Williams show and asked quote-unquote psychic Sylvia Brown about what had happened to her daughter. The woman told her, quote, "She's not alive, honey." With that news and the false alarm regarding Gina, the family's hopes that their daughters were still alive shrank considerably. On Christmas morning in 2006, Amanda went into labor and Ariel took her to the basement where he had put an inflatable pool full of water. Then he went into the pink room and ordered Michelle to deliver the baby. He told her he would kill her if the baby didn't make it. When the baby arrived, she wasn't breathing. Fortunately, Michelle was able to resuscitate her, and Ariel named her Jocelyn. Ariel let the baby live in the white room with Amanda and began treating the 3 captives as a family. After more years of physical and psychological abuse, the women were given more freedom. They were conditioned to not do anything that would get them harmed, and they all instinctively wanted to protect Jocelyn. In November of 2010, Michelle did try to get help by banging on the wall while Ariel was out. A neighbor heard the noise and called the police, but when they got no answer at the house, they left. Later the same day, another neighbor heard screaming coming from the house and also called police, but again, with no answer at the front door, the officers left. There was no follow-up. More years passed and Ariel would take Jocelyn out with him and introduce her as his girlfriend's daughter. He took her to the park and sometimes to shows he played in the area. When he visited a relative in a nearby city in Ohio, he took the girl with him. There were more reports of strange behavior at Ariel's house, but the police never took any serious action. On April 25, 2012, Nilda died due to complications from the brain tumor she had developed due to abuse from Ariel. Ariel was not held responsible for her death. Over the years, Ariel had been disciplined multiple times by the school district. He had been caught using the bus for personal use, and there were some complaints from parents for various problems. Finally, on November 6, 2012, he was fired after parking the bus at the school in a no-parking zone and going home. Though Ariel would later claim he intentionally got himself fired because having a job and keeping up on his home life were too much pressure, the girls later said he was depressed about losing his job. He was soon fired from the band he had been playing in, which was another blow. He got online and started looking for other musicians to play with, but he didn't have the greatest reputation in the music community. To bring up the mood, on April 21, 2013, Ariel brought a cake into the house and celebrated the 10th anniversary of Amanda's kidnapping. It was a very important detail into the mind of Ariel Castro. He was celebrating the very thing that had destroyed someone else's life. Not only celebrating it, but with that person. He had so little regard for the people that he hurt that he was celebrating that abuse with them. With 10 years of captivity behind her, Amanda realized that she had to get out of the house or else she would die there. On May 6, 2013, Ariel announced that he was going to pick up dinner and left the house. Amanda stayed in her bed, assuming it was another trick. Her brain was trying to protect her. Don't try to leave. That gets you beaten. Stay right here. After a while, though, she forced herself to get up and peek out of her room. Jocelyn was there and she had been running up and down the stairs. She was yelling, quote, "Daddy's gone." So Amanda believed that he was really gone, and when she checked the handle to her bedroom door, she found it was unlocked. She crept down the stairs and turned the handle to the front door. It was also unlocked. She opened the door, but there was a metal security door that was locked. She could see through the glass that the neighbors across the street were sitting on their porch, so she started pounding on the door and yelling. She screamed, "Help me, I'm Amanda Berry." When they saw her, they walked across the street and tried to open the door, but it was locked with a chain. Another neighbor came over and they started kicking the lower panel, trying to break the glass, but had no luck. Eventually, they were able to bend the lower panel enough for Amanda to squeeze through and then reach back and grab Jocelyn. Even though she was free, she thought Ariel could return at any time and kill her, so she ran straight into the neighbor's house and grabbed the phone to call 911. The other neighbor, Charles Ramsey, also called 911, which would end up becoming one of the more famous details of the case.
Yeah, hey, bro, I'm at 2207 Seymour, West 25th. Hey, check this out. I just came from McDonald's, right? So I'm on my porch eating my little food, right? This broad is trying to break out the fucking house next door to me. So there's a bunch of people on the street right now and shit. So we like, well, what's wrong with you? What's the problem? She like, this motherfucker done kidnapped me and my daughter, and we've been in this bitch. She say her name is Linda Berry or some shit. I don't know who the fuck that is. I just moved over here, bro.
Sir,
you know what I mean?
Sir, you have to calm down and slow down. Is she still in the street?
Seymour Avenue.
Is she still in the street, or where did she go?
Yeah, I'm looking at her. She right now. She calling y'all. She on another phone.
Is she black, white, or Hispanic?
She white, but the baby look Hispanic.
Okay, what is she wearing?
White tank top, light blue sweatpants. Like a wife beater.
Do you know the address next door that she said she was in?
Yeah, 2207. I'm looking at it.
Okay, I thought that was your address. So that house.
No, I'm smarter than that, bro. I'm telling you where the crime was.
Okay, look, sir, we can't talk at the same time. Do you want to leave your name and number? Or your name and number?
Charles Ramsey, Ramsey.
Are the people she said that did this? Do you know if they're still in the house?
I don't have a fucking clue, bro. I just said I came from McDonald's.
Can you ask her if she needs an ambulance?
You need an ambulance or what? She needs everything. She's in a panic, bro. I guess she's been kidnapped, so, put yourself in her shoes.
We'll send the police out. Thank you.
When the officers arrived, they immediately recognized the frantic woman as Amanda Berry, and when they asked her if anyone else was in the house, they were trying to find out if Ariel was there. When Amanda responded that Gina DeJesus and Michelle Knight were in there, it was like a ton of bricks had been dropped right on their heads. Not only had one person who had been missing for 10 years been in there, another missing person plus a third that nobody had even been looking for had been in there, right in the middle of a regular neighborhood in Cleveland. Other officers raced over to the house across the street and broke the security door open. They went into the basement first, but it was unoccupied. Then they went to the second floor where they found Gina and Michelle. Amanda told the officers that Ariel was driving a blue Mazda Miata, which was located at a McDonald's soon after. Ariel was with his brother O'Neill, and both men were placed under arrest. O'Neill would eventually be released as nobody else knew anything about the three women Ariel had been keeping in his house for a decade. Michelle had been held captive for 10 years, 8 months, and 13 days. She had been beaten and raped thousands of times. She had become pregnant 5 times and was beaten into a miscarriage each time. Amanda had been held captive for 10 years and 15 days. She had been beaten and raped thousands of times. She was pregnant once and was allowed to carry the baby to term. Gina was held for 9 years, 1 month, and 4 days. She had been raped and beaten thousands of times. She doesn't believe she ever got pregnant. When Ariel was interrogated, he showed zero remorse for what he had done. During a second interview, he even claimed that he hadn't raped Michelle.
It says, in August of 2002, I met Michelle Knight at the Family Dollar store located near West 32nd Street, Cleveland, Ohio. I offered Knight a ride and took her to my house at 2207 Seymour Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio, located in the county of Cuyahoga. While at my house, I engaged in bad sex with Knight, against Knight's will and by force from around the day that I picked her up in 2002 to a week before I was arrested May 6, 2013. Is that accurate?
No, it wasn't by force.
You're saying the sex that you had with her was not by force?
Right.
In your words, what type of sex was it?
Consensual.
Okay. I'm going to put, I engaged in consensual sex.
He told that detective that he had taken Michelle back to his house on August 23, 2002, and they had consensual sex, which it clearly wasn't. Michelle told investigators exactly how she had been kidnapped and raped, and then Amanda and Gina told almost identical stories. To hold someone against their will for 10 years while continually raping them and then claiming that even one of those times was consensual is a masterclass on how to be a monster. But that's not what his statement was. He said that it was consensual sex the entire time she was with him. He admitted to restraining Michelle and then thought they would believe that she willingly had sex with him. He told the detectives that he treated the girls well and that he never forced himself on them, but he had a way to convince them to do it. First, that's not true that he never forced himself on them, as Amanda kept a record in her journals of when Ariel came into her room and raped her, and it happened up to 4 times a day. What he's saying to the detective is what Michelle later described as him locking her in the freezing basement until she gave in and agreed to do whatever he wanted. That is not consent. Then he said this.
The third paragraph starts, on occasion, I learned that Knight became pregnant due to the unprotected sex that I had with her. Knight and I thought the best way to terminate the pregnancy would be through a diet of only tea for several days and to have Knight perform knee bends and jumping jacks that would put pressure on her stomach and the fetus.
Well, I'm not exactly sure if she was pregnant or not, so.
But at one time, can I put in there that you thought that Knight became pregnant?
No, she thought.
Knight thought she became pregnant? Okay. And I'll put that in there. Did she ever tell you on more than one occasion, I think I'm pregnant again, or?
I don't recall.
Okay. I put on one occasion, Knight advised me that she may be pregnant due to the unprotected sex that I had with her. Knight and I, it's not just you, thought the best way to terminate the pregnancy would be through a diet of tea only. It goes on to say, we were able to terminate the pregnancy. I provided Knight routinely with 1 meal a day.
And made sure she had food in her room.
Okay.
He wants to minimize what he has done, but that's outside of the fact that he kidnapped and raped 3 people, 1 adult and 2 children, for 10 years. His own need to minimize what a terrible person he is off the charts. It's a strange oxymoron because he also openly referred to himself as a predator. He claimed he had a problem he couldn't control, and at his trial he claimed he wasn't a monster.
What I'm trying to get is that these people are trying to paint me as a monster, and I'm not a monster. I'm sick. My sexual problems been so bad on my mind that I'm impulsive.
Ariel Castro was charged with 977 counts, including 512 counts of kidnapping, 466 counts of rape, 6 counts of felonious assault, 3 counts of child endangerment, and 5 counts of aggravated murder for the forceful termination of Michelle's pregnancies. He originally pleaded not guilty to all charges, but eventually changed his plea to guilty, being sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole plus 1,000 years. He would never see the outside of a prison, but he wouldn't be locked up for that long. On September 3, 2013, Ariel Castro was found hanging in his cell. He had used a sheet as a noose and his pants were pulled down around his ankles. It seemed that, despite having no problem locking 3 women up for a decade, he was not able to be locked up himself. He was a selfish coward who only cared about himself and getting what he wanted without suffering the consequences. Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus all moved on with their lives and were able to make up for the 10 years they lost. Michelle, who changed her name to Lily Rose Lee, is an author, motivational speaker, and founder of Unleashed Animal Rescue. She dedicates her life to rescuing and rehabilitating animals while also running the nonprofit Lily's Ray of Hope to support victims of abuse and human trafficking. While in captivity, her son Joey was adopted, and out of respect for his new life, Michelle never ended up reconnecting with him. Amanda and Gina got honorary diplomas in 2015. Amanda works as a television reporter for Fox 8 News in Cleveland. She hosts a daily segment called Missing with Amanda Berry, where she utilizes her own experience to highlight missing persons cases and help bring others home. Gina dedicates her life to advocacy, operating the Cleveland Family Center for Missing Children and Adults in Ohio. She co-founded the nonprofit to assist families with missing loved ones by providing counseling, making flyers, and navigating the system. The center's physical office purposefully sits just down the street from where she was held captive. They have all written books about their captivity. You can check out Finding Me by Michelle Knight and Hope by Amanda Berry and Gina DeJesus. They're available wherever you purchase books. The 3 women who became known as the Cleveland kidnapping victims suffered unimaginable abuse and loss, but they were able to take that experience and turn it into something good, helping others who may be experiencing something similar. If only Ariel had been able to turn his trauma into something good instead of letting it turn him into a monster. Thanks for watching This Is Monsters. New episodes are uploaded twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. There are occasional bonus episodes covering unsolved cases and criminal history. If you have a suggestion for a case you think I should cover, leave it in the comments. You can always follow the channel on Instagram at thisis_monsters and purchase merch at thisismonsters.com. Thanks so much, and be safe.